Oh, yeah, we're going to start this off the right way. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. I'm John Gorman, again, your co host, because we have a guest host again today, Lisa Franz. Lisa, what's going on? How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you did such an outstanding job guest hosting that last one. I said, hey, you want to come back and do another one? Because there's a ton of topics that are just
Mm.
out there that we can all cover, whether it's on your podcast, whether it's on this one. I really enjoyed that last podcast. So we've got a really fun one today. But before we get to all things hunger, because we're going to really do a deep dive on hunger, some hacks to help offset it and how to understand why you're hungry. Let's talk about what's new with us the last couple of weeks. So when we recorded last time, you're in Colombia.
hmm
Okay. Now you are where?
I'm in Toronto in Canada. I've been here now for about 10 days, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a big change, even just from the temperature perspective, and culturally as well. Although I will say it's always a little bit of a reverse culture shock when I come from a warmer place or a more, I guess like a Latin place or somewhere in Bali or so, to a more stricter culture again. So I'm a kind of experienced when it comes to that, but then it always still gets me in for like a week or two until I adjust.
Yeah. And so what's the temperature there now? It's like 65. I'm in Missouri, central of the United States. You're up just north of Niagara Falls. Toronto's just
Mhm.
north of that. So what's the temperature?
Yeah, unfortunately for the last 10 days, it hasn't gone into the 50s. It hasn't been freezing either, but constantly being in the 40s. And worse than that, just like the gray and the rain and the snow, that's a little bit more annoying because of course, as a somewhat tourist, I like to go and explore, and it limits my time that I can spend outside. So I've been trying to make do with like museums and that sort of stuff.
I love it. I had messaged you that I've went to Niagara Falls, the US side, and we went in August, Leslie and I did back in the day. So
Beautiful.
yeah, it was awesome, but it was warm. So like you could go to the falls and all the water is hitting you. It was fine, but yeah, it's kind of miserable there. But the cool thing is you've got your laptop in hand, you are working
Exactly.
nonstop, diet coach, podcaster, traveler. You've got a cool meetup with your team, right?
Mhm. Yes, coming up in Calgary. So one of the ladies, Laura, who works for me, shout out to Coach Laura. She lives in Calgary and she's been so kind to offer to host us. So the other two girls, Tammy and Allison, are flying in from California, and it's going to be the very first time we meet in person, even though we've been working together in some way, shape, or form for 3 years or so.
That I love that. Any kind of team meeting that you can have and meet up, that's always fun. I'm going to officially invite all of you, your whole team, in January to the Fat Muscle Project Academy. And that's a huge seminar weekend. It's a blast. So
I'm
I kind
excited.
of,
Yeah, you mentioned last time we spoke also that you have that was coming up, and just generally that you have some other projects on the go or on the rise, and I'm excited to hear more about it.
yeah, more seminars. We do a lot of those, and they're just a blast. So I'm going to keep my last 2 weeks short. I've had clients just killing it.
I saw that on your Instagram. Yes.
Yeah, this weekend I had multiple clients doing shows all over. They ended up total with six first place finishes and overall and five second place finishes.
Amazing.
Bikini figure. It was really fun. And then my client earlier in this year, who lives right by Niagara Falls in Buffalo, she won her class in an overall too. So clients have not placed lower than second with a few overalls here and with just a handful of people competing. So I'm pretty proud of my athletes. These three this weekend, it was their first show ever. And matter
Wow.
of fact, I think all of my clients this year, it's been their first shows ever. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember if Hazel's done a show, but yeah, just crazy. And they're all right there within reach of a pro card too in the natural orgs. So they got more that are still pushing. So just it's just been good. We've had record months with the supplement company and got new
Awesome.
stuff coming out. We've got pre-sale and shirts. So just loving it, loving it. We're ready to get back to more podcasts. Kind of took a little break last month. And then our sister podcast, Elite Physique University, with myself, Kayla, and Jason, we're about to start recording again. We've all just been busy, but You know how it is. Like we all need those breaks, right? You deload in
Sometimes.
training, you need to deload with work too. So
Absolutely. But yeah, I'm sure that the girls or the competitors that you've had this weekend, they would know all about our topic today, hunger.
yes.
Particularly towards the last few weeks of such a diet. In most instances, hunger is certainly through the roof. But yeah, I don't know if you had any of them complaining, but I mean, I'm sure, or I hope that they were anticipating the hunger, because I think that is actually one part. Anticipating the hunger makes it almost more bearable and easier, because like and I think we touched on this briefly even last time we spoke, that it's actually a sign that it's working what you want to work, right? Like if okay, I'm hungry, my body is sending me signals to eat, that means it really is burning more calories than what I'm feeding it. So we should, as a first instinct, see that as yay, success, and not, oh, I need to go and find some food or something like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where I tell clients all the time, and we'll talk about the mental component of this too here in a minute. But I tell clients all the time, if you're hungry, that's a good sign. You're not a colleague of mine, Cliff Wilson, one of the best coaches in the world, right? He does a presentation on this and he puts it this way. He goes, if you're hungry, you're burning fat, you're in a deficit, this is a good thing. It means that you're getting leaner. We're going to talk about the hormones that actually help with that. But he says, listen, you have to mentally look at it this way. You're not starving. You're going to eat your perfectly prepackaged meal that you made at home in the next couple hours, more than likely 2 or 3 hours. He goes, there are real people out there that have hunger and they have no idea when their next meal is going to come. Like this is a choice, and it's also a part of the process of dieting. Hunger and dieting are brother and sister. They just go hand in hand. It's peanut butter and jelly. You can't have one without the other. You just can't. And if you don't, something's not right. And there are those instances, but then the mental component comes in too. So you had mentioned anticipating hunger, and I like that. People need to accept the hunger. That's the thing, because the more you focus on how hungry you are, the worse that hunger gets, because then now you're fixated on it. And all you can think about is, okay, when's my next meal? What time can I eat? And the next thing you know is you're all out of food. You're still going to be hungry at the end of the night. You're still going to wake up in the middle of the night hungry. And we're talking about the extreme hunger. So I think going in, just knowing that you're going to be hungry and accepting it is a huge bonus, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you also touched on something good here, which is actually probably the first quote unquote hack when it comes to keeping hunger in check. And I would say that is being somewhat busy slash distracted. So of course, if, like, for instance, during COVID and a lockdown and you're just in your apartment, you had the positive side going for you, that all your meals could have been homemade or prepared by yourself, instead of, or as opposed to having the social distractions. But on the other side, you're constantly at home, you're constantly in front of the fridge. So a lot of people just went to the fridge way too many times. On the if in contrast, you're able to have your regular work day, and maybe after that you schedule a walk with a friend, and maybe after that, before that, you went to the gym, and maybe after that you're going from thing to thing to thing to thing. It's a lot less thinking about food and having that exposure to food. Probably if you're someone who works with food or hospitality and so on, it's most likely always a little bit more challenging. Or if you have to handle food more often throughout the day, perhaps because of your kids or so, might be more challenging too. But from my experience and those of our clients, just generally speaking, the less you can expose yourself to food, the better, probably. And that actually often includes also like auditing your social media and seeing, okay, where am I actually just following like food focused accounts, or maybe even food
Yeah.
porn accounts or whatever, that make you want to eat more and more and more and more. That can be, it can just be that extra little trigger that we don't necessarily need, in my opinion, in a dieting phase.
I agree 100%. The busier that you can stay. And I remember, so I haven't dieted for a show since 2010, and hunger is a large part of it. Besides the fact I get really cranky, hangry. It impacts my work and all those different things. So I haven't dieted to those hunger levels. I got there in 2014 actually, but long story short, staying busy is hugely important, and purposefully not doing dumb stuff to stay busy, but productive stuff. So
Yeah.
with me, when someone's in a diet phase, a lot of people crave the dieting phase because they're very structured, right? They have their meals planned and they have their workout plan and they get their cardio in and they're doing everything on a structure. And that feels good because that's a success thing, right? Like you're knocking things out, you're making these little wins each day. So roll your other stuff into that mindset, right? So like your work, like I've got everything right here in my to-do list right here every single day. I check everything off the list. When I'm dieting, I'm actually better with my job because I stay so focused and I stay sidetracked from thinking about food. So you're right. I'll throw another hack out there because I'm actually just looked at my drink right now. So I've cut my caffeine way back, but carbonated drinks like diet sodas and things like that, I try and tell people do the ones that have no caffeine in them, because the last thing you want to do is start stacking a bunch of caffeine on top of a normal caffeine intake. So there are diet sodas out there that are caffeine free. There's nothing wrong with having a diet soda, and the carbonation actually helps you feel full. So what if you're going to eat every 3 hours, for example, what I would do is stay busy, or I would do something with my kids and I would take one of these with me. And when I did start to get pretty hungry, to the point where I couldn't shut it off, like quit thinking about it, I'd pop one of these and I'd drink it slowly for about 20 minutes. And that helps, right? It's giving you something to do. People do use chewing gum, for example, but I like these. That's a nice little hunger hack. Is that something that you like to do?
Absolutely. I was gonna mention the gum actually myself, or also, I mean, I can't handle caffeine at all, really. So I do a lot of decaf, and mostly decaf coffee. I think like a nice Americano, and even just
Yes.
like tiny splash of milk if you really need it, or almond milk or whatever. But that can often buy you another hour or two until your hunger comes back in. The thing with the gum, huge. I love gum. I will caution people sometimes in a dieting case, because it can take on extremes. I mean, like with anything, but you get to a point where you're just that hungry, and so when people start chewing 1 or 2 packets of gum per day, that's not great for your gut anymore. And then we're starting to run into some issues in terms of bloating and indigestion, and that's really not what we want at that stage. I mean, especially for high competitors, physique competitors or so, that we need to keep your digestion as optimal as possible. And yeah, really adding that extra bloating with a pack of gum or two, not ideal. So try to limit it. And of course the same with the diet sodas. Not I also would stay away from chugging a gallon or two of those, but certainly
Yeah.
like 2-3 cans per day, absolutely fine, especially if you tolerate sweeteners just fine.
Yeah, you're right. Bodybuilding as we know it, people take things to the extreme, and the hungrier you are, people tend to take things to the extreme. I have a
Especially, I mean,
story.
sorry, you go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I have a real quick story. You mentioned a couple packs of gum, and I remember having this girl, it was like 2011, and she was chewing 2 packs of gum a day and she wasn't counting it. And, I was still a little newer then, I'd have full client base, but you get older, you've been through this stuff so much, you already know to warn people ahead of time, right? Like, hey, have a little bit of gum, but don't eat a pack or two a day. Well, this pack of gum had 2 carbs per piece, and there was 20 pieces in there. So there's 40 carbs a pack, and she was doing 2 packs. There's 80 carbs.
Adds
Most of
up.
it is sugar alcohol. So as you said, you're going to feel a little indigestion. You're going to feel stomach upset. it's not ideal, but those are 80 calories, you know. So if I had her dieting on, say, 120 carbs, she's really eating 200 carbs a day. And no wonder she was stalled, right? Then it makes you think, well, what other little things are also creeping in there that we just don't pay attention to? So decaf coffee, I'm a huge fan of. Coffee to me blunts hunger better than any drink. I don't know about you.
No, agreed, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, overall, we can definitely say that just generally staying nice and hydrated is certainly super beneficial for hunger overall. So if people only drink I don't know, 40 ounces or so of water or liquids per day, they're going to be hungry, or confusing, I guess, thirst with hunger rather. So just overall staying hydrated definitely is a good other hunger hack, so to speak. But yeah, I guess before we get into some of these other things, it could be good for you to give us a bit of the background when it comes to the hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, why they even kick in or when.
Yeah, so it's real interesting, and I don't want people's eyes to glaze over when they hear us start talking about leptin and ghrelin, but leptin's the main one I'll talk about. And when people hear this, I've made posts about this on social, and it's gotten a massive amount of shares because it helps people understand, okay, this is why I'm hungry. This is what the body does. So when you eat any food, right? Say I just ate whatever meal 3 for the day, right? You get this response in your body. It comes from leptin. It's a hormone primarily in the fat cells, other places too, but it's made in the fat cells. And it sends a signal to your brain that says, hey, you're full, you're satiated, you're okay, you're not starving. And when you're off season like me and you're a normal body fat level, you can get that signal to your brain, and you're fine. You're not starving. So your body says, hey, you're okay, you're satiated. Remember, it's made in the fat cells. So what happens whenever we diet down, our fat cells get smaller, we produce less leptin. So we get less of that signal to your brain that says, hey, you're full, you're satiated. So right there, automatically, when we said, hey, you're getting leaner, you're on the right track. When you get leaner and you have less fat on your body, you send less of a signal to your brain that tells you that you're full. So automatically, boom, there's hunger tip number 1 to understand, right? It's part of the process. Now, it has a sister called ghrelin, and that's the one that tells you, hey, I'm hungry. So you have one that tells you that you're full, and now you're getting less of it. When you're dieting, ghrelin tells you hungry, it goes up. So now you're getting more signals to your brain saying, I'm hungry. So you're getting less signals saying I'm full, you're getting more saying I'm hungry, and boom, there you go. So it's a natural, your body doesn't care how lean you get, your body's trying to survive. It's trying to say, hey, let's eat, let's get stores back up. It's trying to survive. And the leaner you get, the more intense that will get. Like, it's just your body is trying to fight you. You hear people say hormonally, your body's trying to fight you. Your body is smarter than you are. You're trying to trick your body or push past these signals. And at some point, every one of us is like, most people are going to break. If you're a normal human, you're going to break, you're going to eat. But body fat levels really dictate your hunger levels. And the interesting thing is, it's not just people dieting in a deficit. So after a diet's over, I have reverse dieted people and kept them extremely lean because they had another show in like 6 weeks. And I've taken like a female from 1,200 calories to like 1,900, and she was just as lean. Her hunger did not improve because her body fat levels were still in the same place. She still is getting those 2 signals from leptin and ghrelin, or lack thereof. So you've got to remember, body fat levels dictate what your brain is going to receive on the information end. So I always tell people that it's really interesting.
I think
knowing that going in.
Like you said, knowing that going in is super interesting. And the first thing when I first learned about it that I thought was, how come we have obesity then? Because by that logic, obviously, we'd think the more body fat someone has, the less, or the more the signal of I'm full they have, or the less the signal of I'm hungry they have. But it only goes to a certain extent, really. And after that, it's kind of overwritten, right? Isn't it? The leptin satiation signal, so to speak. So, which is a pity, because otherwise we could just we wouldn't have the issues that we have these days. But you also mentioned that the signals just take over. And I think that becomes really clear in certain studies, such as the Minnesota starvation
Yeah.
study, or so, where essentially, for those not familiar with the study, they basically took people, instead of sending them to war, this was like in the 60s, I believe, and they had them in a work camp, or it wasn't really a work camp, but they just had them do daily activities, and had them undergo for 26 weeks, I believe, a really long amount of time, like a severe calorie restriction. This was just men, but they were down to like 1,400 or 1,200 calories or so. It was calculated per their body weight as well. But anyway, these men kept food diaries and recorded things, and they just noted really weird and interesting trends, like starting to cut down even like a pea into 4 pieces so that the meal would last longer, or switching to teeny tiny cutlery so that the meal would last longer, or mapping out these insane food dreams and glorifying meals, even though they knew they couldn't have them. And these quote unquote weird little trends we do see in normal people nowadays
Yes, we
also.
do.
So if I some of my clients also that have gotten really lean, they report the same thing, like switching to a tiny spoon so that the meal lasts longer, or watering down their oats so that the meal lasts longer, or again, like talking about food porn, or thinking about food, like watching all these food documentaries. That is sometimes something that people pick up when they cannot have that kind of food. So it's really interesting and kind of shocking at the same time, especially if people go through that for the first time themselves. I don't know if you've had any similar experiences or thoughts.
Oh boy, like this is you're bringing back memories now. So I remember I used to take whey protein, peanut butter, mix it in a bowl like pudding, and I would use, my kid was little at the time, I would use a baby spoon to eat it, only because I could, it was my last meal of the night. I could take my I would never do that now. There's no way in hell. I still have that meal every night before bed. It's one of my favorites, right? I just eat a normal spoon. I eat it and enjoy it. And I don't think about it, but I haven't been starving in a long time. So there are those little interesting things. I've got a couple more to add once we're done talking about this, some other weird things that I've personally done. What about you? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, certainly trying to make meals last longer, and cutting things up teeny tiny, or I guess in the study they also just reported like weird habits, such as not wanting to eat with other people and not wanting to be seen because you want to lick your plate. I have certainly licked my plate many a times.
If you haven't, you've never dieted hard enough. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, like things like that for sure. But I guess to give people some more helpful hacks, rather than just observing things from, and when it comes to hunger, um and this is like so basic that it almost seems silly, but I think it needs to be said, and that's just really mostly consuming whole foods. So because we talked about flexible dieting earlier, indirectly, by saying some people add too many sweeteners or add too many things. And I think oftentimes when we see these weird meal, I guess prep meals or so, and people add tons of sugar-free syrup and sugar-free jello and sugar-free this and that, it's all well and good every now and then, but still making sure that, let's say, 80-90% of what you're eating is actual whole foods is going to help a ton with your hunger, because of the fiber, because of, usually food volume is higher, and that does matter to an extent as well. So I think that reminder still needs to be stated, because we sometimes forget about it. And then if you're like, oh, how come I'm still hungry after this 300 calorie meal, and you look at it and it's like a sandwich with not much in it, or and you could as well have some potatoes, which have a way higher satiety
Yeah.
index than bread. Maybe simple swaps like that can often make a big difference. Or like, I mean, I love protein powder for sure, and is certainly implemented in any kind of cut. But if you're consuming protein powder for like 3 times a day as a source of your protein, and you're complaining of hunger, maybe let's switch some of that for chicken and another serving for something else, you're going to be much more satiated because your gut also has more digesting to do.
Yeah, so agree 100%. Making sure that you have vegetables, and I think this is maybe a good time to also talk about vegetables real quick. When I first prep people, I told them, hey, just I don't care, just eat vegetables. It's not a big deal. But I let people eat unlimited amounts, which was never a good idea.
Point, yes.
Not because I'm worried about them storing as fat or offsetting, but people have to remember, if you take a serving of broccoli, for example, it's four total carbs. Four are natural, two are natural sugars, two are fiber. So you're still getting two natural sugars out of that. So if you're eating unlimited amounts, you still have a couple carbs per serving that are still going to add up and count as energy. The fiber's not. But the thing is, the more fibrous stuff, you're also going to hold a lot of water in your stomach, in your gut to break that down. You're going to see the scale going up and down. Some people get backed up from too much fiber. Some people go a lot. It just depends. It's going to throw that off, and you don't want those variables thrown off. So I tell people, get a certain amount of fiber. Usually females average about, during a prep, a diet, 20, 25 grams of fiber seems about right for most guys, 30, 35, 40, whatever. It all depends on the calories you're taking in. But I always tell people, get your fiber, eat your vegetables, and just try and hold that the same. Don't eat a bunch of extra veggies or a bunch of less, because then you start getting into those habits that you talked about. The weird things where we go and we eat. So I said I was going to tell you about a couple of things that I did when I was dieting. I would eat a whole head of cauliflower. I would take the whole thing and I would shave it off and make hash browns out of it. And in my mind, hey, it's just a vegetable. It's fibrous. I'm not really too worried about it. I would eat that every day. And I would put mustard and some low sugar ketchup on there, and that would keep me full, which was not good because my digestion was so up and down from that, right? I would also take Walden Farm syrup and put it on everything. And as you just mentioned, like, that's a gut bomb just waiting to happen. Now, this is 2010. We didn't know, at least I didn't know as much about gut health back then. Most of the bodybuilding community didn't know what we know now. And I would do a lot of stuff like that. So celery dipped into caramel Walden Farms dip, just all those things, because celery, right? What's it going to do to offset fat loss? But it was actually throwing massive wrenches in the engine, especially the digestion process.
Yeah, it's funny how we can always take things to the extreme, or not always, but how we tend to take things to the extreme. So yes, absolutely get your fiber in. But again, like, I've also had people that then have like only eat huge bowls of romaine lettuce and whatnot, because it's high in volume in for very little calories, but certainly not in a good way for your gut. So kind of keeping it in moderation and making sure you're still going regular. And I guess the other thing that's often taken to the extreme also is protein. So I mean, protein, firstly, let's say huge positive point when it comes to satiation in terms of macro distribution. So totally at least 1 gram per pound of body weight is absolutely, especially in a dieting phase, I actually tend to push it up more than that. I don't know what your practice is, but sometimes definitely going above that. Nonetheless, for some reason, I've also had clients that then they might have heard, protein is never going to get stored as body fat, or you can never eat too much protein, etc. And so then they just add more protein to it, to their prescribed macros, and might just push it up to, I don't know, 2 pounds or even more per gram per pound of body weight. And that's the other thing we don't necessarily want. Of course, I don't know your experience with that, but I'd still say, capping it at 1.2 or 1.4 grams per pound of body weight is plenty, and you're going to feel super satiated with that, or as satiated as you can, I guess, with that also.
Protein is interesting. And we should have Dr. Jose Antonio on sometime to do a podcast about this, but he did a study where his folks, and remember, they were not bodybuilders, not trained, but they just ate high amounts of protein. I think females are eating like 300 grams, guys 400 grams, and they got leaner and more muscular, right? But remember, they're also not trained athletes. So just training. And like, I don't know exactly how accurate that is. However, I have with my clients tested this, and in the off season, I don't worry too much about having a higher protein intake. But here's what I have seen: when you're in a deficit and your carbs are getting low and your fats are getting low, your two fuel sources are getting low. Back in the day, bros used to drop carbs and add protein to offset, right? And you would see these guys eating 350 grams of protein trying to diet. Well, the problem is that will convert over into carbs when you're in a deficit and you're low on your fuel sources. And that's something you don't hear anyone else talk about. We need to do a podcast on this. Think about it. If you're in a fat loss state, you're in a deficit, your carbs are low, your fats are low or as low as they're going to get. If you increase your protein and your body's looking for more fuel, it's going to take that excess protein that you're now it's gluconeogenesis. It's going to convert it into carbohydrates. It's not an efficient way to do it, but your body will do it because it's very smart. So with that being said, I've had prep clients. I had a guy that won his pro card in 2018, April 2018. I remember he was eating 300 carbs in the off season, and he was making great gains. He's a hard gainer. I had to get him up there. When I was dieting him, he started stalling out. And then when I dropped his protein down to like 240, that's the only change we made. And it's not because we created more of a deficit. It's because he had less of that turnover happening. Mm-hmm. So I have seen high protein deep into a diet offset everything and stall people out because they're converting it into carbs. So that's an interesting thing. I doubt we'll ever get research on that because you have to really take someone in deficits. I would want to see trained individuals, but it's an interesting topic. Maybe something I could talk to Dr. Bill Campbell or Brad Schoenfeld about. I just don't think we'll ever see research on it. But you're right. Protein that high is never a good idea. It is just not.
I absolutely agree with that. And that whole, it's never going to get stored as body fat or so. I would highly advise just keeping it in a more moderate range, like with everything, I guess. The other thing that came to mind as well when thinking about hunger is, and this is going to be incredibly individual, but it's just meal timing and frequency, because that is actually something you can tweak so that you personally don't feel quite as hungry. I have had so many people just optimize that in a little way, and it helped them massively. So whether that be starting to intermittent fast, for instance, some people, they might have a meal in the morning and like 3 or 4 meals over the course of the day, whatever, and saying like, oh, after each one of my meals, I'm starting to feel, I'm never somewhat satiated, even like I'm always hungry, even right after my meals. But they have a really busy morning. They work out in the afternoon anyway. So why not try to quote unquote skip that first meal and distribute those calories to the other meals and making them a little bit larger to perhaps feel more satiated. Someone might be on the opposite end of the spectrum and saying, oh, I'm only eating 3 meals per day, and those stretches in between, they feel so long, like I just can't bear it, and I'm heading into my workouts totally drained, blah blah blah. And then maybe having something before the workout, pulling from some of the other meals of the day, can also make all the difference. So I think that's often a point that's overlooked just because you're in a certain rut and a routine with something, or maybe your coach told you initially, hey, here's an example, follow, you can feel free to follow this plan or whatever. It doesn't mean you need to stick with this, and we can't play around with something like that. I think that's something worth exploring, or asking yourself as well, like when you're in that hungry stage, when am I hungriest? When do I actually want most of my food? I would say the majority of people probably feel like relaxing and chilling out most in the evening. So I've found with the majority of my clients to kind of like backload your day usually works best. But again, totally individual. I don't know if you've made similar experiences.
I have. So I experiment a lot, if I haven't made that point clear with my clients and myself. So in 2013, I took about, I was trying to remember, it's 15 to 20 clients, new clients. And I ran kind of an experiment because I like to kind of like the rapid fat loss thing that I've talked about here recently. Like that fits into this conversation, by the way. Don't let me forget to talk about that. So I took 15 to 20 clients and I had them eat either 6 meals per day or I had them eat 3 meals per day. The calories for them would have been the same per person, right? I set them up each on their own individual macros, protein, carbs, and fats and calories. But some people, I just combined 6 meals into 3. Same calories, maybe a female's eating 1,500. She's going to get those in 3 meals or she's going to get them in 6. And I saw zero difference in fat loss. Actually, I had the people that ate 3 meals on average dropped more weight, but that doesn't have anything to do with 3 meals versus 6. It just had to do with who was actually doing it. But they all lost fat the same. And I had people report less hunger eating 3 meals per day versus 6. And I always wondered, and now that I'm a little older and I can look back, and now I think I understand maybe why some saw that. They had bigger meals and they knew they had a bigger meal to focus on, even though they were eating less often. And I think sometimes with those of us that eat 5-6 times a day, we've got smaller meals and we're always thinking about, okay, when's that next meal going to be? Or, you're so trained to eat every 2-3 hours that when you're eating 3 meals a day, you're not so focused on that because you eat a pretty big meal and you're going to feel pretty full for a while. Sure, I'm sure they knew they were hungry an hour before they were going to eat, meal 2 out of 3, but they enjoyed it quite a bit. And the only reason I personally don't subscribe to that is I think someone needs at least 4 to 5 servings of protein a day spread out because the research has shown that multiple protein feedings is superior to smaller protein feedings. For muscle gain, and we're all in the gym working out. So the only reason I don't do 3, but I think 4 or 5 is actually probably the best. If I had to pick, I think 4 or 5 is probably ideal. More food at once, you get enough spikes. More spikes isn't better in protein synthesis and eating protein. So I think 4 to 5 would be about ideal. So yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a good point with regards to protein as well. I think that's probably one of the biggest culprits that a lot of people run into when they do intermittent fast, because I mean, I'm neither a proponent nor an opposer of intermittent fasting. If you are able to hit your macros with it, that's fine. But I think a lot of people, they just skip that first meal and then they have such a hard time getting to their protein goal if they only have 2 meals. Let's just say they just have lunch and dinner. For a regular size male, that's going to be 100 grams of protein in each one of those sittings. Who honestly says that they can do that like on a consistent basis without really paying attention to that? So that's where those extra meals, maybe one in between and then like a pre-bed snack or whatever, come in really handy. So that's always my only pushback when people are like, oh, what do you think of intermittent fasting? I'm like, well, as long as you're training in a fed state and as long as you're getting in your protein, that's cool, but be cautious with that. So I would agree that for most people, in terms of practicality, like 4 or 5 meals is probably ideal. But yeah, I guess that would have just been the encouragement here to overthink your meal frequency if hunger is something you're struggling with. And just because you've always done something a certain way doesn't need to mean that you just need to keep doing it that exact way.
Yeah. With
Yeah,
intermittent fasting, I'm not one that likes the long extended periods, but I am someone that, and I've done this quite a bit before personally, it's just personal preference. I'm never super hungry when I wake up. Like I just never am. So I'll get up, I drink the same thing every morning to keep blood pressure down and stuff like that. It's a pretty healthy drink. I drink that, I start working, and I'll let an hour or 2 go by, and then I'll start my day off with a shake because I immediately want to spike growth and protein synthesis. So if you eat eggs and stuff like that's going to take a little longer, and that's fine. But I like to start it right away because I've already delayed the morning. So ideally, in physique enhancement, someone would want to wake up and have some food right away, some kind of protein right away. But it's okay if you want to wait a little while. If you're not hungry, and it lets you space those other meals a little bit closer together by waiting a couple, 2-3 hours, that's okay. There's ways we can all do this. The main thing is what's the best for your goal. but what do you enjoy? So like you have to find that middle ground all the way there. And that's why, being a coach, it's an art form, what you and I do, helping people find that best method. To me, it's part of what I enjoy, because I have people doing all kinds of different shit. Like, it just depends on their goal.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that. And I'm interested because you said you wanted to chip in with part of the rapid fat loss thing.
Yes. Yes. So as you can tell, I've had a really fun time with this since December, doing it myself. January, all my initial run clients are through. I've now had over 20 people do this. Rapid fat loss is, remember when you were talking about being low calorie earlier in the podcast and very lean, that's where people run into the really hard hunger signals. Your body's like, I am starving, feed me. With rapid fat loss, remember, this is meant for people that have a decent amount of body fat on them. Not super fat and obese, but these people can do it too. But people like me, like I'm probably like 16% body fat, right? I don't have abs or anything, but I'm not real fat either. For someone like me, I've got enough fat on my body, I can drop my calories very low, very fast for a short amount of time, and I can lose a lot of fat. Well, guess what I don't experience? I don't experience a lot of hunger signals because I've got enough fat on me. I'm not getting that decreased leptin signal that we talked about earlier that says you're starving. So that's a bonus. It's another reason why I like rapid fat loss plans that I do now for people in my situation. Now, you've been eating, you were up to like 2,800 calories last time we talked. You still have a very lean, amazing physique. I would think with someone like you, rapid fat loss would not be ideal because you're pretty lean anyway. So if we dropped your calories and just bottomed them out, about a week later, you're going to be like, hey, I don't know if I can do this shit, because you're already very, very lean. So it's just a benefit to this plan that I have with rapid fat loss with people that have body fat on them. You're not going to get real hungry. Like, you're just not. And that's a nice thing.
That's a really good point in terms of just adjusting your approach depending on your current body fat levels, actually. The other thing that came to mind, because you mentioned your drink in the morning, and I assume it has glutamine in it, potentially. Yep. I don't know.
It does.
But that's something, and I will admit I don't know enough about the science behind it, but I remember vaguely reading about basically the gut or your stomach also having certain nerve innervations that send signal to your brain in them, that when you're eating something or when you're consuming something, it needs to contain a certain amount of amino acids or glutamine particularly before it registers somewhat satiation or fullness. I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly, but I mean, that would explain why protein is so satiating, generally speaking, because it just like your stomach notices, okay, there's all this amino acid pool in my stomach, I can now be satiated, or I can now register as full. But I would I guess just from having read that or hearing that, I would probably assume that glutamine somewhat helps with satiation then, perhaps also. Is there any truth to this, or is there, I don't know.
I can only say anecdotally. I don't know about the science behind it. I take it for gut health. As far as hunger related, I don't know, but I can report that I put 2 scoops, so about 10 grams, and I do that twice a day. This drink, it's got a little bit of calories from beet powder, so it's got like 3 carbs per scoop. So I'm not like ingesting stuff that's going to make me full outside of fluids. So yeah, I do feel fuller when I drink that versus if I just put like a sugar-free drink packet in there to flavor my water. I drink that and it doesn't do anything to make me feel full. I just keep drinking it. So I have anecdotally seen glutamine help keep you full. I never even thought about that till you just brought it up. So there may be something there.
I'll have to look up where I believed I had read that or heard that. But yeah, it seemed very logical to me, and it did kind of relate it back to like a gut innervation in terms of sending signals to the brain and being able to be traced back to I think it was glutamine, but also tyrosine, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it was certain amino acids, so it just makes sense to consume a good amount of protein and a complete amino acid profile overall, I would say.
I agree. And before we get off here, a couple more things that, speaking of amino acids, a couple more things that I like to tell people is okay, even though it leans a little more towards that obsessive side that we talked about earlier. If I've got clients that they have to get on stage and they're really just struggling with hunger, I will tell them, hey, go ahead and go get a box of sugar-free Jello. It's got 4 protein in it. It's gelatin. Mix that up. It's going to be pretty voluminous, and you can have that once a day because I'm not worried about 4 protein offsetting anything, right? So that seems to help. It gives them something to feel a little fuller. But the other thing too is people can take, and EAAs. We have an EAA product called EAAs Plus. Sometimes if someone's just really hungry, a friend of mine, Jason Wells, he used to, and I've done this as well, put ice in a blender and throw a scoop of EAAs in, like we've got like unicorn candy, and make like a big bowl of ice. It's kind of like shaved ice that's flavored. Do that once a day. That's not really going to offset anything. It's already in the amino acid form. So there's a couple of those in there. I think glycine will convert. It's gluconeogenesis. But I mean, we're talking about splitting hairs, having 1 scoop of EAAs a day. It's not like you're taking scoops of protein powder or anything. So that's something little that will help if you're really struggling. And if it means the difference between you going and cheating on the diet or you able to do these little things, I think that, Lisa, is those middle grounds that we talk about where you start to become obsessive. Dieting causes eating disorders. Like every time I diet hard, I have a small issue with food, nothing major like dieting for show, but sometimes these things help you, and these are not things you're going to stick with after your diet's over. Like you're not going to go eat shaved ice with EAAs or, you're not going to go eat sugar-free Jello. But during dieting, I think, a couple things like that are okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, the EAAs, I mean, I have never tried the shaved ice. That actually sounds delicious, but I will, I mean, usually in a maintenance phase or a surplus, I don't bother with EAAs, but I think in a dieting phase, if again, if it comes to the combination of maybe like 1 or 2 diet sodas and then 1 or 2 decaf coffees and like 1 EAA drink or whatever and a couple of gums, that's fine as long as we don't take any of them or all of them to the extreme.
Yeah, it's just getting on stage is so brutal to get to true winning condition. So those of people listening, they understand. They know what that feels like. For the rest of us that just diet, maybe we've got a trip coming up. I've got a huge speaking event at a business conference in 12 weeks. I'm slowly dieting for that because I'm going to be in front of a massive amount of people in a different industry, not the bodybuilding industry, it's going to be in the business sector. So, we all feel confident. We look a little bit better. So, it's one of those things to where I'm not going to experience the kind of hunger that I would during prep. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm probably not going to do any of these things, but if you have to do them, it's okay. So this has been a fun episode. I think we covered everything in detail. Do you think of anything we left out?
No, I think that was pretty much all that I had in mind also.
Yeah. Good stuff. So what do you have coming up next?
Yeah, aside from my few travels here within Canada and then heading over to Europe, still, or at the moment, just maintaining my weight more or less, and I haven't really formulated a plan for afterwards. So we'll see how long I'll stay just at maintenance.
Okay, well, anytime you have a laptop, you're more than welcome to come back and help run this show. So I'm probably going to talk you into coming back on. So we've really appreciated it. We're going to go ahead and get off here for myself and Lisa. We're out of here. See you guys.